Deuteronomy chapter 33. I call this message Shoes for the Road. So welcome to the first day of the rest of your life. And who knows what the coming days, weeks, months and years are going to bring. Now I would hazard a guess and say there are going to be times of blessings coming in your life. And there are going to be times of not so many blessings coming in your life. And there are probably going to be times that are rather difficult coming in your life. And there are probably going to be times when you really wish you weren't there at all. See, we don't know where the road we walk will pass through. We don't know what sort of terrain we will traverse. And if you've been around for any length of time, you'll come to understand that our lives do not always go as we expect. Back in Israel's early days, they were instructed to enter the promised land, a land described in Numbers 13 as a land flowing with milk and honey, where it took 2 people to carry a cluster of grapes. However, it took another 40 years and another entire generation before they finally entered the promised land. The text I'm using was a prophecy and a blessing given by Moses to the tribe of Asher just before Moses has passed away. Asher was Jacob's 8th son, his mother being Zilpah, Leah's handmaiden. By God's choice, this tribe was being given land on the northeast coast of the area, north of where Haifa is today, and extending up into what is now known as southern Lebanon. It was coastal. This area was, well still is, very mountainous, some fertile valleys, but it's very mountainous and it's known for its sharp, flinty rocks. Welcome to the promised land. But at least from the heights of those mountains, you can look out over the valleys and plains where the milk and honey were flowing, where all your brethren were living. Must have been a wonderful view. You know, it's never good to look at the blessings of others and lament what you think you lack. It leads to despair and despondency. See, who knows, you don't always get what you expect in life. However, God is a God of promise. Deuteronomy 33, verses 24 and 25. And of Asher he said, let Asher be blessed with children, let him be acceptable to his brethren, and let him dip his foot in oil. Your shoes shall be iron and bronze, and as your days, so shall your strength be. Verse 24 promises prosperity to the tribe of Asher, that Asher will be blessed with many children and live in peace with their brethren. The promise, let him dip his foot in oil, refers to the fact that Asher would have so much oil, he wouldn't just anoint his head with it, but he could wash his feet with it also. This speaks of an abundance of oil and a blessedness. And this was fulfilled that the very best olive oil came from the foothills of the land of Asher, a land abounding with olives. This also fulfilled Jacob's blessing in Asher in Genesis 49:20. Even today, that area is a big exporter of quality olive oil. So Asher's land was fruitful but mountainous. To the people who lived in rocky, hilly terrain, God promises iron and bronze shoes which were protection for the roads they would have to travel on. Now, depending on the translation you've got in your phone, iPad, or whichever Bible you're reading, there can be a difference in the way that this has been translated. You know, the New IV is different. That's why it's a nearly infallible version. This has to do with a Hebrew word that became translated in more than one way. So although the symbolism is different, the final meaning in either case is the same. It's talking about providing protection. Some translations will say bolt, gate, bars or fortress, signifying that Asher's dwelling would be strong and impregnable. They would be protected because this land was at the top eastern edge of the promised land and one of the corridors or routes through which any invaders would come. So So God was promising protection. I think one of them says that your bars shall be iron and brass, meaning there shall be protection around Asher. But for this message, I'm going to follow the King James, which speaks of iron shoes for a rocky road. It says, thy shoes shall be iron and bronze. God was saying, Asher, although you'll experience prosperity, there are going to be times when the road of life will be tough and rocky. Sometimes difficult and hard to travel, and you are going to need shoes of iron and bronze. You're going to need protection for the journey that you'll be travelling through, for the walk ahead of you. This is God's promise of protection. From this verse we can make a very simple application. We need to live by the day. Every day is the beginning of a new journey. How will we go? What will the road be like? Will our way be rough? Will our way be easy? Our text suggests that as well as prosperity and blessing, we may also have some rough roads to travel before our journey is done. God's blessing of iron and shoes of bronze was a protection against this journey, because Land Rovers haven't been invented yet. So. Now, if the way of our life is to be flower-strewn and carpeted, velvet slippers will do. And if all you're going to do is sit and watch TV and videos, we don't need iron shoes. A pair of socks will do just fine. But if we have to travel rocky roads in the hard places, we need good footwear. Now, I'm not claiming to be a prophet, but I'm sure that we'll all walk some rocky roads in our lives before our life's journey is done. For some, it will be challenges of family. For others, it could be challenges of health. For others, it could be challenges of finances. Maybe even a challenge of your faith in God. But there are no silk slippers on the road to heaven. We need iron shoes because the road can be hard, the way difficult, and the path sometimes treacherous. God gives great promises because the road itself is difficult, steep, and hard to climb. Your shoes will be of iron and brass, means that the road ahead is rocky, it is dangerous, but God has provided protection for the walk that He takes us on. As disciples of Christ, God's word is clear. We are on a journey and we're on a road. And the good news is this: what God demands of us, He supplies. The rough roads in life is where the finest gold can be found. Shoes of iron are only promised to those on rough roads. Those whose journeys have become rocky, those whose journeys are struggling. There is a wonderful promise here for all who find themselves on a rugged road, and that is that God will provide for the ruggedness. If you're going through a tough time, God will provide for the tough times. Those going to a wedding don't wear thongs, or not usually, unless it's on the beach. People don't usually come to church wearing their work boots. A tradie doesn't normally wear sandals to work. I do know some Kiwis who did, but that's a different story. But if God's people are on a hard road, He supplies them with iron shoes for the journey. Peculiar grace is promised to them. God will provide for the ruggedness of their path so that they will have peace in the rocky sections, in the tough sections. They will have a divine blessing that would not be theirs if they were not travelling the rough road. And the rougher the road, the more the divine help, the more grace is provided. Days of struggle and stress and problems get a lot more grace from God than the calm, quiet, peaceful roads. So long as any demands are put upon us, so long will God's strength and grace be sufficient to us to enable us to meet the demands of that particular day. There's another suggestion in this promise. God's provision for every situation is found in the situation itself and is not given in advance. Iron shoes are not given until the rough road is reached, because they're not needed until you reach the rough road. So often we worry about the future. As you were saying this morning. We worry ourselves by wondering how we'll get through different and anticipated situations. I'll let you into a secret here. There are no promises in the Bible of provision for our needs while those needs are still in the future. God does not put strength in your arms for the battles of tomorrow, but with the battle comes the strength. God meets your provision on the day of the battle. The second part of verse 25 says, as your days, so shall your strength be. God will provide the strength and grace proportional to what we are experiencing on that individual day. He doesn't do it in advance, he meets our needs for the day. Psalm 20 verse 7, sorry. Some trust in chariots and some in horses, but we trust in the name of the Lord our God. Psalm 18:32. It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. Back when we were in the Northern Territory, up in Nhulunbuy, in Arnhem Land, we had a good friend there. He's called Clary. A little Kiwi bloke. He had a remarkable life. He was in New Guinea in the 60s, working in the bush, and he had a remarkably adventurous life. He lived on a boat in the top end of Australia and in Southeast Asia for many, many years. He owned property in the Philippines where he ran an orphanage and a school. He used to spend about 6 months of the year, dry season, working on a grader on the tracks and the roads around Nhulunbuy and Arnhem Land. That was his job for the corporation. He graded all the roads and tracks in the dry season. In the wet season, he used to go back to the Philippines and work in the orphanage that he had there at the school with his wife Anna. The last couple of years of his life, he got really sick. He had cancer, and he was going to Darwin for treatment. But he chose to return to palliative care in Nhulunbuy, where all his friends and family were. And when we talked to our common friends up there in the church, they said that he had the peace of God. He was fully aware of his situation. They said he was very calm, and then he said he was ready to meet Jesus. See, God gave him the strength, the grace, and the peace he needed in the situation that he was in. Clary passed away beginning of January 2017. So, he was a unique man. Look, don't waste your time and stress yourself asking yourself questions about how you would or could handle situations in the future that may or may not arise. It is a waste of your energy, it is a waste of your time, it is a waste of your life. There is no promise of grace to meet trials where there are no trials to meet. There is no assurance of strength to bear great burdens when there are no great burdens to be met. Grace for facing trouble is nowhere promised while that trouble is still afar off. We need to plan intelligently for the future and leave the future in God's hands. There's a wonderful promise in Lamentations 3:21-23. This I recall to my mind, therefore have I hope. It is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Have you ever thought about that? God doesn't have a limited amount of grace and mercy for you that every day you take a bit till it runs out. It's not a fixed amount. He doesn't give us recycled mercy. You know, it's not like your mum at the dinner table. You can't have any more till you finish the old stuff. You know, eat your dinner or you don't get no sweets. And his mum used to say that. But that's not what God's like. God's mercies are custom designed to whatever it is that you will experience and struggle with today, and they are new every morning. Paul Tripp said, I may not understand what is happening, and I may not know what is coming around the corner, but I know that God does, and that He controls it all. So even when I am confused, I can have hope, because my hope does not rest on my understanding, but on God's goodness and His rule. We have the assurance that every morning of every day, God is there with a fresh supply of strength and grace for what it is that we will face on that particular day. God's strength comes to us in daily portions. God did not say, as thy weeks be, or as thy months be, or as thy years be, but God said, as your days be, so shall your strength be. Someone has said, you can eat an elephant if you do it one bite at a time. As your days, so shall your strength be. A promise of great provision. God will give strength for each individual day in the years ahead. God will give strength for every kind of day that we may face. Some days are filled with joy, light and happiness. Others with tears, sadness, frustration, pain and heartache. Whatever each day brings, God will give strength enough to meet it. And God will give strength to our days until the end of our days. We will run out of days before God runs out of strength. The more harder the day, the more strength God will give you to meet the challenges of that day. When you have hard days, fear not, your strength will equal your days. When you have days of sickness, fear not, your strength will equal your days. When you have days of doubt, days of confusion, fear not, your strength will equal your days. Our days vary, our trials change, our service changes too. Our lives are very rarely monotonous for very long. They're peaceful sometimes and then it changes. Very often our lives are like a song written by Jim Steinman and sung by Meatloaf. They change tempo, beat, volume, with many notes and tones and harmonies. But the strength that God gives varies with the occasion. He can bestow physical strength and mental strength. He can bestow moral strength and spiritual strength. He gives strength just where that strength is needed, of that peculiar kind that that particular trial demands. Deuteronomy 33:25 assures us that no matter what happens, God's strength will always equal the situation in the day that you're facing. I'm in my 60s now, and I know that will come as a surprise to many of you. No, I'm not in my 80s, but I'm in my 60s. Came as a surprise to me. But in my 60s, I find this promise means more to me than it did 30 years ago. See, when you're young, you feel strong and able to take on the world. In your 20s, you think you've got the world by the tail. You're indestructible. In your 30s, you can work for hours and not feel that tired. But in your 50s, your body starts to send you unexpected messages. And when you reach your 60s, you're not as strong as you used to be. Your energy doesn't last as long. Your stamina seems to disappear quicker. And the parts of your body that seemed invincible are now beginning to show signs of wear and tear. Joints are wearing out. As Leonard Cohen sang in Tower of Song, I ache in the places where I used to play. And what will it be in our 70s or 80s? Well, some of you already know. But it's the same for all of us. Even if you exercise every day and go to the gym and take all your vitamin supplements, eventually in this life, your body's going to wear out. Your strength's going to diminish. And that is precisely where this promise becomes so significant. We discover with the passing of time that God's strength and grace and provision is more than enough for any situation that we face. So even though we grow older in the body, our faith grows stronger, our hope grows stronger, our love increases, our zeal grows, and our patience grows. As God helps us, we find more and more of what we need is actually found in Him. Because we're getting empty, we're getting older. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. What does this suggest for us in our life's journey? It means that God's strength and grace will be there when we need it and not before. We will never find a day in our lives when God's strength and grace is lacking for what we face. We will have strength as long as our days last. This should give us a hope and a confidence that we should not be anxiously looking for the future and the things ahead. In happy days filled with sunlight and song, we won't need as much strength, but if the hard times come, we will find that God's strength and grace is more than enough to meet our needs. This provision of God is meant to meet weakness. The words carry an understanding that we have no strength of our own, that we have need from strength from above. Now our proud hearts often need this being told to us because too often we rely on ourselves. Although often we're as weak as water, we get the notion that our own strength can carry us in any situation, but often our own efforts will not be sufficient. If we begin to trust in ourselves, it doesn't take long before we find where our limits are. But the Lord will not let His people depend on themselves. They may make the attempt, but as sure as they are His people, He will empty them from themselves and make them know that their fullness dwells in Christ, not in themselves. If you ever sort of have a sense of your own weakness, you're getting a sense of the truth. Jesus said in John 15:5, without me, you can do nothing. And that's about the full extent of what we can do without Christ. The Lord promises you strength, which He would not need to promise if you already had it in you, apart from Him. But He promises to give it, and therefore He assures you that you need it. So lose your self-confidence, lose your self-esteem, drop the notion of your own natural ability, rid yourself of the foolish idea that you can do anything in and of yourself, and learn to get on your knees and come to the strong one for strength, and ask the Lord to fulfill this promise in your own experience. As thy days, so shall your strength be. The strength which here is promised is to abide through whatever the day brings. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. Not for today only, but for tomorrow and for every single day of our lives as we go through them. The longest and the shortest day. The brightest day and the darkest day. The wedding day and the funeral day. The healthy day and the sick days. Each shall have its strength measured out until there are no more days. The Lord will portion out to His saints their needed strength, support and grace, even as your days follow one another. Sometimes we need to remind ourselves that God is the God who goes before His people. We're a Pentecostal church. We contend for the presence of God in the here and now. We come to worship meetings on Friday, I wouldn't have wanted working. And we contend for the presence of God in the here and the now. Many times, though, we tend to limit our thinking to the fact that God's presence is with us as we go through this life. And while that's true, that's only a part of the story. He's not only with us now, but He's already way up the road ahead of us. You think about it this way, when we're struggling with the problems of today, God is hard at work providing solutions for the things we're going to face tomorrow. He's already there, creatively working in situations we have yet to face, preparing them for us and us for them. Well, we're living in Sunday. He's already clearing the road for us next Friday. God is at work providing solutions for problems that we don't even know we're going to face yet. You're worried about next week? Well, don't be. God's already there. How about next July or next January? God's already there. About that crucial meeting you've got to go to next week? God's already there. Or about that tough decision that's coming up that you've got to make? Guess what? God's already there. It would be enough if God walked simply with us through the events of life, but He does much more than that. He goes ahead of us, He clears the way, He arranges the future details of our life so that when we get there, we can have the confidence that God has already been there before us. He's prepared the way. That's why this promise is true. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. While you're slogging your way through this week, God is already in November, stockpiling the strength and that you need, so when you get there, you've got what you need and plenty more besides. There are some practical lessons we can take from this verse. Take each day as it comes. Don't try to force the future. Let God lead you. Do not be full of anxious care about what the future holds. Do each day what the Lord gives you to do in that day. And rejoice in the Lord always. I'm going to close with this thought. God will not put you in an unbearable situation in your walk with Him. But He may put you in a situation that seems unbearable, so you will learn to turn to Him, rely on Him, and trust in Him. Remember that God does not give you His strength in advance, but only when it's needed. Each day of your life, you will have what you need. Therefore, we may therefore go forth in our Christian walk with confidence, with joy, and with hope. It has been said, Christ's feet were pierced with iron nails, that we might have iron shoes for the road. We cannot succeed in life without Christ, but with Him by our side, we can face any situation with confidence and joy. Jesus walks beside you as you provide space for Him to do so. Don't wait until the real big trouble comes. Call on Him every day. If you ignore God and try and go your own way, those rough days can build up and up and up till it seems insurmountable. It's always better to call on the Lord daily, every morning, or every day, so that the small changes, the small challenges don't become really big ones. Know when it's time to put those iron shoes on. Author and pastor Ray Stedman points out that the chief mark of the Christian ought to be the absence of fear and the presence of joy. He goes on to say that the Christian is a person who is A, completely fearless, B, continually cheerful, and C, constantly in trouble. Most of us have that last part sorted. But when we are fearless and cheerful, even in the midst of our daily troubles, then the world can take us seriously because they just simply can't live this way. It is the presence of joy and the absence of fear in the midst of troubles, trials and tribulation in our lives that convinces others that we truly know and are confident in the love of the Lord. As thy days, so shall thy strength be. We need not be overpowered by life's problems. Throughout our life there will be burdens, there will be problems, there will be heartaches. It's a normal part of life, just as thorns are part of roses. But those hard times need not defeat us, because God's strength and grace is wonderfully adequate. And as we call on Him, we can receive that strength one day at a time in exactly the right amount we need to face the dilemmas, problems and issues of that particular day. God's strength comes in daily portions. And therefore he expects us to live one day at a time, not stress about the future. And life can be lived triumphantly if you go about it in that way. One day at a time, that's God's plan. As you call on him each day, the amount of strength and grace that he gives you is just right for the trials of that particular day. So put on the iron boots that God provides and go out in his strength and walk tall on those sharp, rocky roads of life. Thank you. Amen. If you're in prayer this morning, you come down the front here, we'll pray for you. If you want to find God's strength and power for whatever you're facing today, and you want to just help discovering instead of glossing on you of that grace that's new every morning, you come out and pray. If you want to learn to trust not on your own understanding, but on God's goodness and the fact that he is in control, you come down and pray. God is not only with you every day, but he goes before us every day. He prepares the way for his people. And whenever you want to pray, you pray with him.
Thanks, Andrew.